Oh wow.
So what would it, oh, we've got 13 people, that's great. So I'm going to zoom in because you're going to be the, hi again.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good, welcome. So we already have attendees in the room, so I will let you get started whenever you're ready. I'll just do a quick 30-second introduction. Actually, Lauren, I might pass that introduction off to you, but just a quick note. So we are going to cap out around 15 minutes. So you'll see my face pop up when we have a couple minutes left. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat. You won't be able to see the chat when you're presenting, but I'll read questions out to you after if they come up. So take it away.
Great. Perfect. Kia ora, or hello everyone. My name's Lauren and I work here at the University of Otago in the International Office. And I'm delighted to have Chetan here with me today, who will sound a little bit more at home because he is from Canada. And the idea really today with this session, we don't kind of have a formal presentation, but we thought it's just a really good opportunity to talk a little bit more about life in Dunedin. Obviously you hopefully have some interest in the Bachelor of Dental Surgery program, but you know, it's a huge commitment going across the other side of the world. So we really just wanted to share a bit more about the experience, what Dunedin is like as a city, and for you to be able to hear firsthand some of you know, the experiences which Chetan will be able to talk to. So just to set a bit of context, I thought I would give you a little bit of an overview of Dunedin as a city. So we are not a large city. We have a population of around 131,000 people here in Dunedin. So it's not what you call massive, depending on where you come from in Canada, but it is very much an educational city. So the University of Otago is New Zealand's first and oldest university, so there's a real education history and tradition, and students really make up a big portion of the city. So we do have around 21,000 students, so as you can imagine, of a population of 131,000 people, it's a large student population. There's a lot of young people who live in Dunedin. In terms of lifestyle, I think New Zealand as a whole is a really similar kind of atmosphere or lifestyle to Canada. We're pretty friendly, we're very laid back, we're very relaxed. So I think the big thing about the university and just lifestyle here in Dunedin and in New Zealand is very much kind of a work-life balance. The program itself, obviously, you are here to study a professional program. We want you to do well, we want you to go on with a successful career, but also, you know, you're not going to be in the clinics or in lectures or labs the entire time. So one of the big advantages of where we live, we are a beautiful coastal setting, so you can get to a number of beaches within 10 minutes. It's like a $2 bus ride. You know, you can run there if you like. We've also got beautiful mountains, lakes. So if you like the outdoors, and you don't have to be an outdoorsy person, you have access to almost every kind of environment. So it is a really nice balance between, you know, working, meeting people. It's a real melting pot with people from all over New Zealand and the world in Dunedin. But it's also just enjoying a sort of a laid-back, relaxed lifestyle. There's a great coffee culture. But in saying that, if you are wanting a really big city and you want to, you know, go to the mall at 9 o'clock at night, it's not really the option. I know that's something that that Chetan can talk to a little bit more. So before I take up too much of our time, Chetan, I thought, do you want to kind of talk about your experience? Yeah, what's Dunedin like for you? What's being in the program like? What are your words of wisdom for students?
Yeah, for sure. So I came here in February 2020 from Toronto. I studied at McMaster initially, so I kind of already had that vibe of like, you know, like staying in a very campus-oriented university. So when I came here, it was very similar, I'd say, in terms of the architecture, in terms of just how the student life is. Similar to what Lauren said, New Zealanders and Kiwis, I'd say, are very, very laid back. So it's very easy for us to assimilate into the culture. They're very open to meeting new people. Everyone's very, very polite. I'd say if Canadians are stereotypically known as being the nice people in the world, it's probably the people here that are even nicer and more polite than back home. I'd say that for sure. So when I came here, we went through university flats, or uni flats as we call them, for our accommodation, which is pretty much where they give you a flat and you live with 2 or 3, sometimes more students all in one house. So we were fortunate enough that they gave us 2 houses that were just for the Canadian dental students. So I ended up flatting with all the other Canadians, which is why you could probably notice that my accent has not changed at all. You could pick up the slang and stuff, but I'm pretty much just talking to Canadians all day anyways here. But so you end up flatting with the other Canadians. You join your class, which is about 100 or so kids. And what you notice in the class alone is that there are a lot of internationals. It's not just going to be the 10 or so people that are coming from Canada. So it's very easy to meet other people from different cultures, get to know, your class very well, because everyone is, it's very student, it's a very big time, student city, so it's very tight-knit in terms of, how much you interact with each other. The professors are very, very nice, I'd say, very encouraging, give really, really good feedback when it comes to the profession. Very understanding as well, especially with the times that we're in right now with COVID. They're very accommodating, I'd say. In terms of the city itself, like Lauren alluded to, it's a smaller town for sure. For example, I come from Toronto as well, specifically Brampton. But so that city is a lot larger and things are open a lot longer. So here you'll notice that everything does tend to close at around 5 to 6 p.m. So that was something that did take a little bit of adjustment in the beginning or so, but then honestly after a while you get used to it. And you do get quite a bit of holidays, I'd say. So with that said, that you do have a lot of chances to travel. So I've been to some of the other larger cities such as Christchurch, and I just came back from Auckland about 2 weeks ago. So you do get that same kind of feel that you would get in Toronto for sure. So in all, I'd say it's very, very fun for sure. Lots of tourist attractions, and the school itself, as you guys probably seen in the ranking worldwide, it's ranked very highly. So, and you could definitely see why it's ranked very highly with just how they prepare you here. And yeah, pretty much
that's awesome. So as Jaden had mentioned, the housing, because we are such a residential campus, typically 85% of our students that study here actually come from outside of the city of Dunedin. So I think that's what makes it quite a collegial city is we've got a number of postgraduate students that travel from abroad, but even at the undergraduate level, more students come from other areas of New Zealand. So it is a really nice environment where everyone's sort of in the same boat. Obviously coming from Canada is just a little bit further than, say, Auckland or Wellington in New Zealand. But because we are such a residential campus, students typically tend to live in our residential colleges or dorms, as you might know them. But flatting is very much the kind of setup. So a lot of people do find their own independent flats, but it was great. We do have the university flats service. So they are houses, anywhere between 3 and 6 bedrooms. And generally what we do with uni flats is try and match people who are like-minded. Normally we wouldn't have all students coming from one area studying the same thing together, but the way it worked out with OzTREKK was actually brilliant in that students could come together. They're obviously studying the same thing, but we certainly like to make sure that everyone is integrated into Kiwi culture and the community. So there are certainly lots of opportunities alongside obviously meeting your classmates, but getting involved in clubs and societies. So as you've probably been familiar with in previous institutions, we've got all sorts of sports clubs or cultural clubs, but we absolutely accommodate all different kind of backgrounds and areas of interest, whether people are social or not. So I know that obviously we're unsure of when borders will open, given at the moment New Zealand is currently closed, but when we get back to normality and students can travel to New Zealand, if you are looking to apply for the university flats, one of the things I would say is just be as honest as possible on your application. The job is not to decide whether they want to place you or not. It's finding the best placement for you. So that's just a really good opportunity to say, if you are a really social person, then we will maybe put you in a house in a more social area with other social people with similar interests. The same as, if someone has got any particular dietary requirements, we will try and place you in a house that maybe it's all vegetarians, you're sharing a kitchen, something like that. So the idea is that we want to provide as much support as possible and make you comfortable and with people that are really going to enrich your experience here. I realise that we're around 10 minutes, but I did want to leave a bit more time for Q&A, or if there are specific questions that they have. So Sarah, I just wondered, do you have any, are there any questions that have popped up, or, if students do want to raise their hand and ask a question, particularly, we've got someone who can answer it from, a student's point of view, then we're really happy to field those questions.
Yep, absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions pop up yet, but please type in your questions. A great opportunity to chat to somebody and kind of get some answers from someone who's living it. Actually, I'll kind of start off with the questions actually. So what would a typical week look like for you in the program, and kind of how would you kind of do the work-life balance?
So a typical week here is, I found it slightly different compared to like McMaster, because our school days there would go from 8:30 to 10 p.m. So the thing about our school here is that it starts at 9 and it'll go towards 5 p.m. is the latest possible time. Like all your exams, tests, everything will be there. So a typical week, we'd say we'd have clinics for perhaps, you'd have sim clinic 3 to 6 hours depending on the week, so it alternates. And you'd also, in second semester, we started triplet clinics, which is when you would go into the brand new dental school. You'd work in threes, and you'd pretty much do examinations on each other, which would be intraoral examination, extraoral examination, etc. And then we had 2 other classes, which would be like oral biology and doing anatomy, etc. And 1 other class on like ethics. That would be like your typical week.
Okay, great. Thanks. We have a few more questions pop in. So how was COVID affected clinical courses of your first year? I know obviously New Zealand did a fantastic job with COVID, so.
So pretty much what happened is we had like one really strict lockdown from about the end of March to June. So that meant that literally you couldn't go anywhere or have any sort of like takeaway or restaurants. Everything was closed until June. So in that time, we didn't do obviously any clinics. We did all our schooling online, just like how it was in Canada. But once the situation improved, our second semester is pretty much like normal. Like we did everything as is. Like there was no masks involved ever. Like, obviously you have a mask when you're dealing with like a patient, but like there's like, it was like normal life here, I'd say.
So right now, just in terms of COVID, we're really fortunate in that there is no community transmission in New Zealand. So the biggest issue right now is the fact that our borders are closed and we have strict managed isolation and quarantine for anyone coming back in. We don't need to worry about social distancing anymore, or as Jim has mentioned, masks. So we are using like a government tracing app. So if you go and get coffee and you trace that you've been to that cafe, but aside from that, everything is back to normal in terms of face-to-face classes, practical, clinical, anything like that is completely back to normal.
Great, it's fantastic. We have time for a couple more questions here. So what do students do on weekends, and what's the winter like?
So students on weekends, yeah, so it's a professional program, so you do get quite a bit of work in terms of like just reviewing, because you have to review like anatomy, like it's very, very in-depth, pharmacology, memorizing everything. So you do have a lot of like stuff to go over, but definitely like it's, if I were to compare it to a university in Canada that people allude to here a lot, it's like Western. So it's like, it's very social. If there's a group for you for wherever you want to go, like, so pretty much like, that's why like what Lauren said, like be very honest in like your applications for like flatting especially, because there's like literally every kind of student here. Like someone who wants to like be very independent, someone who wants to be very social. So there's activities all year round. And the winters, I'd say the houses here are not as insulated as Canada for sure. So I'm someone who's used to like just wearing shorts in like the house there. It could be like minus 20 there. But here you do have to like, it's definitely colder, I'd say, in the house. But living with Uniflats, you don't pay for power. It's already included in like your like weekly rent, which by the way, rent is weekly here. It's not monthly like we're used to.
And it's about 183 Canadian dollars a week.
Yeah. So it's
I have a question pop up about that. So
Yeah.
great, thank you. So what was the biggest difference you noticed about moving from Canada to New Zealand? Oh, we have a Western alumni that just popped in.
I saw that.
The biggest difference, honestly, for me was, yeah, like the seasons are switched. There's that, like, so your body's kind of used to it being like, when it's like February and stuff, it's gradually going towards summer, but here it's gonna gradually get colder. The other thing was like the timings of the stores and everything. That was a pretty big difference. So closing earlier, classes. So I'm not really a morning person at all, but they make you do like, they start pretty early and then you gotta be done everything by 5. Whereas I'm someone who used to take like all like evening or night classes. So yeah, definitely outside of that, like everything else, I'd say it's like so easy to like come from Canada and adjust to New Zealand. It's very, very easy.
Great, that's awesome. Okay, we'll take one more quick question. Can you talk a little bit about your clinical and what you're doing and how quickly in the degree are you starting to work with tools and things like that and do the clinicals?
Yeah, so with the tools and everything, you pretty much start like right away. Like I'm talking like first week probably. So like you start right away, they literally say, okay, these are the tools, you're gonna use these. And in sim clinic, you're working with a partner and you work on wax teeth. So it's like right away. And then in second semester, you use your tools and you start working on your partners in those triplet clinics I was referring to earlier. And one thing that we noticed that was different about like some of the North American programs is we start actual clinicals with patients in second year. So this coming year, I'm going to start like actually working with patients on like things such as fillings, restorations, etc. So yeah, we're pretty much starting that right away now.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining. That was really nice to hear a little bit about your experience so far. So thank you so much for joining. And as I said, if you do have any more questions, head back to the Career Echo chat room. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of the fair and your evening.
That's great. Thanks everyone for joining.